Welcome to the College Football Bros, the podcast previewing a make-or-break Saturday. And now, here are your hosts, Michael, Ryan, and Trey Newman.
Welcome to the College Football Bros podcast. I am Michael Newman, and I'm joined by the brother who is 1 year older than me.
That is me, Ryan Newman.
And by the other brother who's 3 years older.
That's right. That's me, Trey Newman.
All right. On today's episode, we're going to go over our takeaways from last weekend. We'll analyze the new coaching hire at South Carolina and give a primer as to which games matter this weekend in the conference championship races. But first, we have a word from our sponsor, myfrontpagestory.com. So this is just a perfect holiday gift, especially during a pandemic, because you don't have to go to a store, don't have to fight the crowds. All you have to do is talk to a professional writer on the phone about a loved one for 10 or 15 minutes. That's all it takes. And the writer is going to write a personal story about your loved one. It's going to have quotes from you in there. It's going to look like it's printed on the cover of a newspaper, and you can buy it with a frame so your loved one can hang it up in their house. It's a really heartfelt gift, perfect for a spouse, parent, especially a grandparent during a pandemic when many of us can't see our grandparents. And would encourage you to go to the website, myfrontpagestory.com. Look at the examples they have there. You can see just the great stories that they've written about other people's loved ones and just the amount of care and detail that goes into it. So if you do decide to purchase a story for a holiday gift this season, be sure to use the promo code BROS20 for 20% off. So give the gift of happy tears. That's myfrontpagestory.com, promo code BROS20. All right. Let's get to our week 14 takeaways. So what do you got, Trey?
First one, I'm going to talk a little bit of the Heisman. I know it's hard, it's hard nowadays to win the Heisman when you're not a quarterback or even a running back, but wide receiver Devontae Smith should be getting a little bit more love, in my opinion. He's getting love, but maybe a lot more love is needed. He leads the nation in receiving yards. In his last 4 games, he's averaging almost 200 yards and has 11 touchdowns. And he's done it in big games. He's done it in the Iron Bowl against Auburn, and now this most recent week against LSU. Since Jalen Waddle went down, teams know he's the main guy, and he's still just excelled. And he's toward, like, this past week against Stingley, arguably the best corner in football. He was doing very well against him. Mac Jones, of course, deserves to be in the mix because he's the one dealing it to him. But it certainly helps having a guy like Devontae. He's fast. He can make contested catches. He's not like a one-trick pony. And he also, if you look at him as the Heisman in terms of maybe career achievement, I mean, people still remember he made one of the biggest catches in Alabama history, winning the national title. Mm-hmm. So he's got that to his resume, if that helps at all.
Yeah, and in that loaded receiving core last year, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, all those guys, he was the leading receiver.
Yeah, he had 14 touchdowns last year. So, I mean, he's going to shatter that this year.
Isn't it amazing?
He was on your fantasy team last year, wasn't he?
He was on my fantasy team. Yeah.
I think you had
How did your fantasy
Patterson
team do last year?
Oh, I think I won it, if I'm not mistaken. I think I beat Trey in the title game? Who was that?
Some schmuck, I guess.
Patterson had like 6 touchdowns in the final game or something.
Yeah, he's still scoring.
It was unreal. Man. Okay. You could throw in Kyle Pitts, man, as far as getting maybe some Heisman love. Like, especially he had to miss a game too, but like, dude, he's been unreal. I mean, there's some legit receivers going on. So anyways, my first takeaway, maybe they already kind of have been doing this, but I just feel like this week was even more so. The top 4 teams are separating from the pack. Like, there's a clear and obvious top 4 teams: Ohio State, Clemson, Bama, and Notre Dame. They all won easily. They all won without any trouble this week. And then you take a large gap to number 5 at A&M. I mean, it's really just well,
what about Florida? I know in the rankings, A&M's ahead of Florida, but
that's true. Florida I would put as the 5th best team ahead of A&M, even though, okay, they got beat by them. I get it, but
yeah,
come on, people. Florida's still really good, but I still think those 4 teams are the clear and obvious top 4. Florida's had some close ones, of course, and they did lose to A&M. I'm not going to say they're worse than them, but they did lose to them. So
Sure.
I just, even if you say, let's say Clemson loses, I still feel like there should be like Clemson loses to Notre Dame. Like I would still take them over a one-loss A&M without even thinking about it.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of playoff or just in terms of who you think would win?
Playoff.
Okay. Yeah,
you can make the case if you said, "Hey, Trevor Lawrence was out at the first Notre Dame game." If I was
two close
back in
losses
that
to Notre
side.
Dame, they're still really, really good, and Notre Dame would be undefeated.
That's interesting. I think A&M would be in over them, but I hadn't really thought about it much. I just assumed the 2-loss team.
Yeah, I don't
would
know.
Be out,
I'm not so sure they would. I think the committee would consider that. Who's the better team?
Sure. Okay.
So, yep.
All right. Well, one of my takeaways is happened on Friday night. It's one of the craziest coaching decisions I've ever seen. So Louisiana at App State, and Louisiana was up 24-19 with 1:51 left, and they had a 4th and 2 at their own 35. So usually most coaches make the exact same decision. You punt it away, and you just try to prevent App State from scoring a touchdown. But this was a unique situation because Louisiana's long snapper had been horrendous the entire game. He had the yips for sure. So and apparently they didn't have a backup long snapper. At least they weren't willing to put one out there. So basically the long snapper, you could just pretend he got hurt because he was so bad. So instead, what they decided to do was take an intentional safety. They ran back 35 yards, took the safety to make it a 3-point game. It took it from a 5-point game to a field goal game. And then on the kickoff, since it's a safety, you're kicking from 15 yards farther back. So there's a decent chance App State's going to get good field position. It was just crazy.
Should have gone for it.
It should have just gone for it. I think that was the clear thing to do because there's a good chance you get it and game's over. It's 4th and 2. Even if you don't get it, yeah, they've got a little bit better field position than they would after a kickoff, but they need a touchdown instead of a field goal. So
yeah, but it's not even a kickoff. It's like
it's a safety kick.
It's way further back.
Kick.
Maybe. Well, I didn't remember where they ended up getting the ball, but
they ended up they had a good return. So they ended up, I think they were 10 yards difference. Then,
but either way,
but
the other thing is if you go for it, you're still up 5. So it's not like not only up 3. Honestly, the court, or if you were really concerned about it, I'm sure the quarterback could pooch it 15 yards.
That's another thing. Someone mentioned that to us on Twitter. I think it was Marcus said that on Twitter. Yeah, pooch punt by the quarterback. Yeah, that's another great option.
Because then you're still up 5, and they still have to score a touchdown to beat you. It was astounding. You're watching it, and App State missed the field. They had a
so App State ended up. What happened was they got into really close field goal range, a 30-yard field goal to go to overtime. They ended up missing it. So Billy Napier got really
made the right call.
I mean, they won.
If that was your team. And App State goes to overtime, you would just be livid with your coach. We were all
couldn't believe that.
Part of the great part about our Discord is we were all watching that game and texting each other on that, saying, "What did he just do?"
Yeah, there's a Twitter account, website called Deck Prism, and they provide live odds to sports books. It's run by 2 really sharp guys. Like I said, they actually work for sports books, I think. So they said that even ignoring let me say this. So they said that punting it or going for it there were basically even, as far as win probability. Now that's not factoring in as they acknowledge that the long snapper sucks. So then the clear decision comes to go for it.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Should have gone for it.
All right. My second takeaway is kind of off the radar, but what happened to Marshall this weekend? Marshall, they were unbeaten, cruising along, and then out of nowhere, they get shut out at home to Rice, and they were a 24-25 point favorite. Rice was without their starting quarterback. I know they've played better this year, but they were still a big over 3-score underdog. Freshman Grant Wells, who's been outstanding this year, he threw 5 picks for that was just crazy. out of nowhere. one of the biggest upsets this year, but there was a crazy stat that since 1978, no home team favored by 21 or more had been shut out. And only a handful of times in history has a team lost by 20 or more when they're favored 21 or more. So basically that's like over a 41 point swing from the point spread. That's only happened a handful of times. It was crazy.
It was crazy. Very weird. All right. Let's go to my second takeaway here. Coastal and BYU, the game of the year. Game of the year. That was awesome. So cool that these teams got to play. I mean, it took some guts from BYU to go all the way across the country. On such short notice. So people that were giving them a little bit of baloney 2 weeks earlier for not playing Washington, they can go suck it.
Maybe pound sand would be better.
So anyways, the game was awesome, right? It was back and forth, close game, low scoring battle. Even though it was low scoring, though, the offense were still like moving the ball relatively well, so it didn't feel like it was like a kind of a painful low scoring game to watch. It was like, okay, it was still, you saw a lot of good plays. Coastal actually rushed for 281 yards, so they had a huge game on the ground. The offensive line looked really, really good. Those smaller guys just were moving the line really, really well. But the course, the finish to this game was insane. So let's kind of touch on the last bit here. So Coastal was up 22-17. They had a 4th and 2 with just over a minute from their own 47. So almost sort of a similar situation there with the Louisiana.
And they took an intentional safety?
Yeah, right. So they're up 5. BYU had no timeouts. So do you punt and pin them deep? BYU's got to go 90-ish yards under a minute, no timeouts. That's pretty tough, right? Or do you go for it, which the color commentator really wanted him to do. He really wanted him to go for it, where the play-by-play guy was like, "You're crazy," without saying it. He was like, "What are you talking about? Kick it." I thought it was the easy choice to kick. It was a 4th and full too, so sure it wasn't that crazy though. But I thought punting was the right move, so they punted it. BYU got it at their own 18. They ended up going to getting down to the Coastal Carolina's 18-yard line. Last play of the game, Zach Wilson threw a pass just to Dax Milne, who caught it just a few yards short of the end zone and tried to fight his way to get to the end zone, but it was just 1 yard short. Couldn't quite get there. So Coastal hung on by 1 yard, one at the last second here. It was just crazy. What a way to finish that game. Like, it was awesome. Coastal's 10-0 now. I mean,
Titans Super Bowl, the Rams just couldn't quite get there.
It was crazy. That was awesome.
All right. Over to Indiana. Tom Allen is continuing to make his case for National Coach of the Year. They won at Wisconsin without Michael Penix, 14-6. Defense played great. And so Indiana's now 6-1 with, of course, the only loss, a close one on the road at Ohio State. And by the rules that were set at the beginning of the season, could very well be headed to the Big Ten championship. We're going to talk about it later, whether that's likely to happen. But either way, Tom Allen has done an incredible job at a program that is historically one of the worst.
It's like the best year they've ever had. I mean,
I would have to think it's up there at least.
It's their defense, man. What a remarkable year for them.
Yeah, very cool for them. My last takeaway is it was from a game that was kind of under the radar, wasn't nationally huge, but Oklahoma State lost to TCU despite they forced 5 TCU turnovers and lost. And the takeaway I have is it made me start to think. I've been thinking about this the last couple of weeks. I'd be really curious to know what the true loyal Oklahoma State fans think about the program and Gundy at this point. Obviously, his era has been the best stretch in history, but they have to be kind of frustrated, I think, by not being able to take the next step. He's 2-14 in Bedlam. They always seem to be good, but not quite good enough. Spencer Sanders this year just hasn't quite lived up to the hype, and he's been inconsistent in his couple years. And this year, going into the year, this was supposed to be one of their bigger years. With the Pokes, they had arguably the best defense they've had, paired with the talent coming back on offense, and they just haven't put it together. They got blown out to Oklahoma. They're 6-3, losing 3 of 5. You know, a lot of schools would like the success they've had, but I wonder if Cowboy fans think it's starting to run its course.
It's hard to say. I mean, it could be one of those things like be careful what you wish for. I mean, you know, like you mentioned earlier, it's the best stretch they've ever had. Like,
yeah, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, they did win a Big 12 one year, right? That was the Braden Whedon year, right?
Yeah, they had 1 year they went 12-1.
Yeah.
I mean, they're always relevant, but it's just, you know, I think
this was a big year. I mean, it seemed like it was going to be a big year, so it's definitely disappointing.
Especially the way it started. They were like 5-0 or 4-0. So no, I mean, I hear where you're coming from. It's kind of been this steady of the course here for a while. So
something to look forward to, at least in the next couple of years. Yeah, if they don't, if they're having 4 lost seasons, then maybe it starts.
We'll see the offense. Who can lead that offense next year? Sanders. I don't know if he's the guy. So
we'll see. They had the offensive line has been
the line sucked.
They had some. It was supposed to be really good, but they had some guys opt out, injuries. So
that's true. All right. My last point here, my last takeaway, the UW Stanford game. It was a pretty crazy game in itself. So Stanford came out hot. They were up 31-10 in the middle of the third quarter, but keep in mind UW was down 21 points in the week before against Utah, and they came back and won that game. So they almost did it here. So at one point UW was down 31-23. They forced a Stanford fumble deep in Stanford's territory. So they were like prime position, red zone, ready to score. They lost like 17 yards in that possession, and they ended up kicking a field goal. So it was 31-26 with just under 8 minutes. So pretty much 8 minutes left in the game, and they never got the ball back. Stanford held onto the ball for a 14-play, 79-yard drive that lasted that entire 8 minutes.
That's awesome.
Won the game. So that was a pretty impressive way for Stanford to go and win in Seattle, finishing like that.
Yeah.
So now they're 2-2. They play the Beavers in their last game here. So could finish 3-2 for Stanford, which would be pretty solid for them.
Yeah, started out 0-2, I think, and wasn't looking good, but nice turnaround by David Shaw.
Yeah.
Well, last takeaway here, Texas A&M. I feel somewhat quiet to me. I don't know. No one's talking about them as one of the legit best teams. I know they're 5th every week here in the playoff rankings, but they are alive, of course, in the playoff hunt. They won at Auburn 31-20. Offense had a great game. And in the playoff rankings, of course, that just came out as we record, they're 5th again, like I said. And Cincinnati dropped to 8th behind 2-loss Iowa State. So that's really good for A&M. If there's that chaos scenario, you might have been comparing undefeated Cincinnati with A&M.
They just essentially said, Cincy, you're done.
They kind of did. I mean, it's tough and now Cincy also having to cancel their game this weekend at Tulsa. Yeah, that was another chance for a top 25 win for Cincy. So both of those things together suck for Cincinnati, but good for A&M. So if A&M wins their only remaining game at Tennessee next weekend, they don't really need that much to happen to get in. They need probably Alabama to beat Florida and then Notre Dame to upset Clemson. If those two things happen, A&M is probably in.
It'd be so that would be the debate of who gets in over Clemson or A&M.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Or you could, maybe it's Iowa State.
Ohio State loses.
Now we're just throwing out.
Now we're getting crazy.
We did that last week, but
sorry.
No, it's okay. But that A&M game though, by the way, Auburn dropped an interception in the Auburn was up 3, I think it was, and Mon threw a pass that really should have been picked, but it got tipped, and then the receiver caught it for a touchdown. I mean, that was a huge swing. That was in the fourth. That was like right in the early fourth quarter. So
I almost brought up that play. That was a huge play for sure.
They still could have won, but that changed the game.
That's why A&M's kind of being looked at as under the radar here, just because they obviously very easily could have lost that game. The week they looked really ugly against LSU. Kellen Mond was terrible in that game. They just haven't looked good. They're skating by. I mean, they beat Florida. That's their calling card. They had that good game against Florida, but it's like outside of that, they have not been all that impressive.
Nah, but they're like,
I mean, relatively,
yeah, still pretty good.
Yeah, I know.
But I hear you.
Another similar kind of heartbreaking moment was Arkansas against Missouri,
Oh.
very high scoring game. So Arkansas scored and at the very end, and they decided to go for 2 to take the lead. And so they throw the pass and right to a Missouri defender, just like right in his hands.
Easy.
And somehow it bounces off his hands and goes to an Arkansas receiver for the conversion. So Arkansas 1-point lead with like a minute left or something. So it was heartbreaker for Missouri, but Missouri did end up marching down the field and taking a field goal to win.
They ended up winning. So
that defensive
heartbreaker for
player
Arkansas.
that defensive player would have been sick if they didn't pull it out, because it was the easiest pick.
Yeah, he would have been the sickest person in America, along with the long snapper for Louisiana had they lost.
Oh.
Yeah. All right, let's get to our segment here. It is the coaching carousel. That is starting to turn here. So let's talk about some hires. Southern Miss has hired Will Hall, offensive coordinator from Tulane, as their head coach to replace Jay Hobson. Trey, what'd you think about this move?
I gotta be honest, like, I follow college football religiously, and I honestly hadn't heard of him, just because. And I follow some of Tulane because I like Willie Fritz and whatnot, but didn't know. So yeah, Tulane's offensive coordinator. He's only 40. What's interesting though about this hire for Southern Miss is it's most likely means a shift to a more run-heavy offense. Tulane, as we know, and maybe if you don't know, they've been a run-first offense, and they actually lead the AAC in rushing this year. So that might be a little shift, because Southern Miss, we're kind of been more traditionally used to seeing them be more high-flying, throwing it around the lot. So it might take a couple years to develop that. So I'm willing to see what how it shakes out.
About 15 years ago or so. The glory days of Southern Miss. They had some good years there.
They did.
Yeah, they've got a pretty good history, so they do. They demand more.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
All right, South Carolina, the big hire, of course, has hired Oklahoma assistant Shane Beamer as their next head coach. What are your thoughts, Ryan?
Yeah. All right. This is a little bit of a tough one here for me to kind of judge. Just don't really think it's a home run hire at all. I don't think anybody can look at it and be like, "Oh, what a fantastic hire this is." I mean, I'm sure you can be positive about it and think, he's going to be good for you. But yeah, he did work under a lot of great coaches. Started with his dad, of course, and then Steve Spurrier, Kirby Smart. Last few years under Lincoln Riley. So he's got the pedigree that you're looking for as far as where he's worked under. So at least in that sense, it's good. But he's never really been a coordinator. He's always been a position coach. And then I know at OU he was the associate head coach, whatever that really means when you're not a coordinator. So it's like he's never been in charge. It's like you say, this is his defense. He's so good. Oh, this is his offense. He's such a good. So I think maybe he could be a good CEO type. I guess maybe that could be kind of his thing, which obviously a lot of people have had success with that. Saban is the master of that. But so I want to see who he fills a staff out with, we'll see how legit of a staff he brings on, because I think that could really make her fail his tenure there.
Break is
make or break. Yeah.
Wow.
They rhyme, so it's really nice to put make and break together.
God, I couldn't come up with it.
I think Billy Napier would have been a home run hire. I don't know if he wasn't interested or why that didn't happen. Maybe they just preferred Shane Beamer, but
he was actually ready to sign it, and then he decided to take the safety, and South Carolina was like, no,
wait a sec.
Wow.
Nope.
That's fair. That's
fair.
No,
I agree. I like Napier.
But yeah, you kind of said it. Head coaching hires are hard to predict as to how they'll work out. Like Dabo Swinney, right in the state of South Carolina. Like at the time, I'm sure that I was very underwhelmed with that hire. I don't remember, but I imagine I was. Pete Carroll, same thing at USC. Even last year, Carl Durrell and Sam Pittman at Arkansas, another guy who's had never been a coordinator.
Yeah, you're doing well.
And so far, those have turned out well. And I think you brought up the key point is sometimes we maybe underrate the staff around the coach, because like with Sam Pittman, all three of us were kind of like, like he could work out, sure, but we don't have much to go off of other than his personality and, that players like him and he can recruit, but we didn't know how he would be as a head coach. Well, you surround him with a really good staff. And I think like with Kendall Briles as offensive coordinator, I think that's done wonders. And to his
Barry
credit,
Odom.
he hired those guys. Yeah, Barry Odom on the defense.
We liked his staff, so that's kind of why we were, as head coaches go, we were like, but hey, he brought in a really good looking staff, so that's vital.
Yeah, and look at Coach O. Like his first 2 years at LSU, they were good and fine, but we've brought up before, he was kind of maybe lukewarm seat. They weren't super necessarily thrilled with him. Bring in Joe Brady, suddenly the offense explodes, and suddenly Coach O is a genius. So, the staff can be really important. So that's what I want to see with Beamer, especially when you've got a CEO type coach.
Now he hired Bo Pelini and looking like a clown. So,
Coach O. Yeah, that doesn't look to be a great hire.
But go ahead, Mike.
I think
go
ahead,
Trey.
For Bo.
Basically, so my opinion is like it's underwhelming. That doesn't mean it can't work out, but I don't have much to go off of here.
Yeah, it's TBD. I've been doing this now for a few years and really trying to evaluate coaches. It is very difficult to predict, and there's no guarantees. If I was a Gamecock, I could talk myself into it, Ryan, like the way you talk about it, getting a good staff, some of his stints. But one positive I will say is when he was at South Carolina, he was a recruiting coordinator. His classes hovered around the top 15. He landed guys like Stephon Gilmore, Alshon Jeffrey, Lattimore, to name a few.
Clowney? I don't know if
he might have been. I mean, it obviously helps to have Spurrier above you, but he's familiar with the geography there, and he proved that he could recruit at a decent level there. So that's one thing I would talk myself into as a Gamecock fan.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay. Let's get to some coaches. Well, how about Scott Satterfield? What were your thoughts on that? He, I don't know if he interviewed for it, but he may have interviewed or at least had a conversation with South Carolina, and now Louisville fans are very PO'd about that. What do you guys think? How would you feel?
Well, I thought he just said, "I'm not interested." I don't know. Didn't he? Like,
he had a conversation, and then I don't know if did he say he was not interested preemptively? But either way, there was talks there. There were talks.
Yeah, I guess I haven't seen him emphatically coming out and saying, I'm Louisville all through and through. But yeah, I guess that's what he should have done, right? Being a little more. I mean, I don't know. If I was a Louisville fan, I'd understand the little skepticism there, but at the same time, it's the way of college football, man.
Yeah. Well, and the Louisville fans are, granted, they're having a disaster of a year, like this is the worst case scenario year that they could have had with some hope going in the year. So that compounding with this certainly didn't help their opinion.
Yeah. Okay. 2 coaches got fired as well. So who was the first one, Trey?
Yeah, South Alabama fired Steve Campbell. I think it was right. Unfortunately, I mean, they just lost this past weekend, 29-0 to Troy. He went 9-26. They haven't been to a bowl game since 2016. And South Alabama as a program, they just unveiled this past season an $80 million on-campus stadium. So the time is right, I think, to get some new blood. And honestly, it could be a semi-attractive job given, well, one, the facilities, but also the Sun Belt made a name for itself this year. So there's some opportunity there.
Sure is. Speaking of Sun Belt firings, Sun Belt firing number 2, Matt Veeder, Louisiana Monroe. Tough place to be successful down there in Monroe. They don't quite maybe have some of the advantages, even like a school like Lafayette. Louisiana has. I didn't mean to do that. My bad. But I'm talking about both Louisianas now, so it's
that makes sense. I'm okay with Lafayette.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. So come on, I got to separate them. But he got Monroe decent for a few years. They went 4-4 in conference like 3 straight years in a row. So that's not too bad. And then this year they just tanked, bottom completely fell out. They're 0-10, and only one of their games has been decided by less than 10 points. So like they're not even a good 0-10. They're a bad 0-10 team. So you had to let them go. Of course, there's no fire. So they're looking for potential replacements. We didn't really bring that up for South Alabama, but I got a couple head coaching candidates we could go with here for Monroe. Okay. I took a quick peek. Mark Hudspeth, of course, he coached.
That would be crazy.
He coached Louisiana Lafayette. Got to say it, for several years. Obviously, did very well. Kind of slowed down at the end, but then last year he coached Austin Peay. He had like an 11-win year at Austin Peay. He did well. Broderick Fobbs is the other guy that I saw. Coaches Grambling State. So that would be kind of an interesting hire there. And then, so a couple guys to throw out.
Okay.
But they're
Cool.
they're so low on the wish list,
Yeah, it's I feel like that's impossible to identify all the possible candidates because it seems like anybody's
could be like a
anybody's in
community
play.
college guy, like
yeah.
So it's tough.
All right, well, let's move on to week 15, and since this is the last week of the regular season for most teams, like I said, we're going to go conference by conference, and we're going to tell you maybe the conference championship has already been decided who's going to be in there, but for those that aren't, we'll discuss the scenarios there. So we'll start with the Power 5 and the ACC, Trey.
Yeah, this one, very straightforward, slam dunk. It's already Clemson versus Notre Dame. They're not even playing this week, of course, because they kind of adjusted the schedules last week to kind of nail this one down. And it's interesting because the ACC title, it really, as long as I can remember in recent history, it's been awful and terrible, and what's going to happen going into it. But this is as compelling of a game as there is, so it'll be fun to watch next week.
For 1 year, we got a good ACC. Then we'll go back to normal next year. Looks like. Well, maybe North Carolina. Yeah. But
a lot of teams.
Maybe the U if they get another quarterback, or if King stays.
Yeah. Oh, it's true, because you can technically come around.
Everyone can technically stay. That's going to make this offseason really
That's what I don't get about the
whole
scholarship limit coming in next year. Okay, there's 1 year where you can have more, but then it goes right back to 85. But all those freshmen, junior, sophomores right now, they can all get another year. So it's just like it completely compacts it. So I don't know. There's gonna have to be some tough decisions for coaches. Like, sorry, kid, you got to leave. Like, I don't know. I feel like they should have extended the scholarship limit further than just 1 year. Anyways, moving on. All right, we're going on the Big 12 here. It's all set. We got Iowa State for the first time in Big 12 history. Iowa State is going to play in the conference title against Oklahoma, of course. And kind of, not crazy, I guess, but OU did not look like they might have a shot to get in here. Like after week 3, they already had 2 losses. So they're playing obviously as well as anybody. Both of these teams are playing awesome. They're both look really, really good lately. So OU, though, this week they play at West Virginia, are currently favored 14. West Virginia just got smoked by the other team in the Big 12 title, is Iowa State. So it's kind of a tough 1-2 finish here for Iowa State, or for West Virginia, having to play the 2 best teams. But I'll take OU, though, in that game, -14 only. And it's a little bit of a tune-up, so maybe that's why they're, But I still think they'll just smoke them. But hey, still a good year for West Virginia. And either way, they'll go 5-5 if they lose. It's a good year too. So yeah, Big 12 all set.
And last week, Oklahoma had, of course, a ton of players out due to contact tracing. So they wasn't super impressive against Baylor, but all things considered, all you needed was a win. All right, Big 10 here. So this gets interesting. Big 10 West, Northwestern has already clinched this past weekend with Wisconsin losing. So they're all set. They do take on Illinois this weekend. They're favored 14.5. I'll take the points with Illinois there. Northwestern, last we saw, lost to Michigan State. And it's just hard to take Northwestern to cover by a big margin against anybody. So
exactly.
Yeah, taking those points. Big 10 East. Here we go. It's been over a half hour and we haven't talked about this here. Or not quite a half hour, but anyway, that's not relevant. So as we record, Ohio State, Michigan has been canceled. And it looks like it's very possible that Purdue, Indiana game is also going to get canceled because both teams are having to pause due to COVID issues. So Ohio State right now is 1 game short of the 6-game requirement to make the Big 10 title. So there's kind of, I see 3 options as to what could happen. One is the Big 10 can decide to do away with that 6-game requirement and just allow a 5-0 Ohio State team to get into the title over 6-1 Indiana. And I get that that's a bad look to change the rule after the fact just to get in, your big team, Ohio State, a chance to, improve their playoff odds. But I will say,
in the first place.
Yeah, I that's why I'm kind of okay with it, because I think the rule was the mistake.
Exactly.
You've got one team 5-0 that beat the team that's 6-1. Like, they should have foreseen this and been like, you know what, the 5-0 team is probably going to be more deserving to get in.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
it's a
was
bad look. I
mistake
get it.
there.
I get why people think it's unfair, but
Especially if you could have been a team that only played 5 games where you didn't cause, it wasn't your fault. Maybe like you didn't cause it. You didn't have a single COVID issue. How can you put that on that team? Like
two of the games that got canceled were
exactly.
the
So that's
opponent.
just not. It just wasn't a fair rule.
Yeah. So I'd be okay with it if that's what they decide.
Yeah.
The other option is they don't have to get into that. They can just find another team for Ohio State to play this weekend to get them to that 6-game mark, which could happen. It depends on the cancellations in those other games. Then the third option is just do nothing. You just say, sorry, Ohio State, you're screwed. You're not going to the Big Ten title, which doesn't mean they're screwed. They could still
Honestly,
make the playoff without
not
it.
that big of a difference, because then they'd probably end up with, they're going to still play an extra game anyways.
Right.
Just because they don't make the Big Ten title game doesn't mean they're not going to play another game. They would just play like Wisconsin or something instead of playing, or Iowa instead of playing Northwestern, which, I mean, we're kind of splitting hairs, honestly, with those teams,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, maybe a win over Iowa, who's may have won 6 in a row, would be a more impressive win for Ohio State anyways. I don't know if that happens. So I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that happens. We'll see. But
yeah, as you're listening to this, it's probably been decided because we're recording on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. I think the ADs are meeting. I would not expect option number 3. I would think they either find them a game or change the rule. So
yep.
We'll see.
And
they deserve it.
This year is such a fluid year. Like, yeah, might be a screw for Indiana, but I mean, of any year to be able to kind of do it on the fly, this would be it. They if as long as they just kind of admit fault in the air or the rule at first, I think that's the best way, because we all know Ohio State's better. I mean, it's just, but that is the rule. So I went to
an Indiana blog just to kind of read the comments and see what their thoughts were, and I was surprised. Like, most of the comments were saying
reasonable.
We get it. They beat us. Like, we shouldn't be super upset about this.
Yeah. If I wonder how it would have been if you replaced Indiana with like Michigan. Would Michigan people think the same thing?
I don't
think they would. I think they'd have different.
Maybe they
comments.
would, although I don't know.
It might be a little different. But that was good to know, though. Indiana. I mean, they had their chance, right? They had their shot.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to the Pac-12. Few scenarios here. So first of all, in the North, it's pretty straightforward. It's the winner of this weekend's Washington-Oregon game that will decide who goes to the Pac-12 title in the North. This game, it lost a little bit of lust when both teams lost this past weekend. Oregon, they're a 6-point favorite against UW, but I just don't quite trust them at this point, given that many against a pretty good team. The Ducks have been kind of underwhelming this year. I know they've had their opt-outs that didn't help, especially on defense, but the offense hasn't been overly impressive this year with Moorhead and Tyler Shuck. They've turned it over 11 times in their 5 games. So I think the Washington defense should be able to do a good job keeping the Ducks in check. Dylan Morris, though, I mean, for UW, he might not have much passing success. He's been pretty average. But Sean McGrew has averaged over 5 yards per carry for the Huskies. I think that should fare well against the Ducks. So I'll take the Huskies +6.
So is that, I haven't looked into this myself. That's it. Winners in, that's it, or is there any other scenario that could happen?
That's it. Winner take all there.
Gotcha.
Then the South, it comes down to SC and Colorado. USC sits in a little bit better shot, better position, because if they win, they're in. They play UCLA. If they beat the Bruins, they're in. Colorado plays Utah. So here's the deal. So like I said, if USC beats UCLA, it doesn't matter. Game over. USC's in. Colorado, they're in a tough spot because if they both win or they both lose, they lose the tiebreaker no matter what to SC, because they've played one less game. So that rule for that, the Pac-12 is kind of coming into play. So at this point, Colorado's only chance to get in is if they beat Utah and have USC lose to UCLA, which isn't really that far-fetched. So here's the deal. So Friday night, we're going to kind of know if Colorado has a chance, because they play Utah, and they're currently a 2-point favorite. I'm actually going to take the Utes they're 1-2. Ryan, you mentioned they blew a 21-0 lead at UW. But then this past weekend, they beat Oregon State. They had 9 turnovers in their first 2 games. They didn't have any this past week. Freshman running back Ty Jordan has looked great. Britton Covey has started to look back to his kind of pre-injury self at receiver.
Yeah. Punt return.
And punt return. Devin Lloyd, their linebacker, he's been stepping it up. They're gonna have to slow down Jarek Broussard. He just came off a game where he had 301 yards, which, by the way, he had 301 yards and didn't score. That's tough to do.
That is crazy. Ooh, that sounds like a play index opportunity.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's right. But I think the Utes defense up for the challenge here, and they might upend Colorado. And then USC, UCLA, fun game. USC is only a 3-point favorite. Kind of a little surprising, but the Bruins, they've been playing much better under Chip Kelly this year. DTR has been a little more consistent, even though he hasn't played every game. Demetric Felton, though, at running back, over 5 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns in their games. But I got to go with the Trojans. We all know they were fortunate to win their games against the Arizona schools. But since then, they've been pretty dominant. Convincing road win at Utah, and then just an utter thrashing of Wazoo, particularly in the first quarter before they kind of called off the Dogs. We knew about SC's offensive talent, of course, and they've kind of displayed that for the most part in the last couple of games. But I came away at least a little bit encouraged with the defense. That's been the question mark. They stymied Wazoo's offense, 4 sacks, 2 picks. I do think this will be a higher scoring game, but I'm going to take the Trojans.
Yep. Sounds good. All right. Let's go SEC. It's Alabama versus Florida. We know it. It's all set. So for as far as how they're looking this weekend, Bama's got Arkansas at Arkansas. Their favorite 32. Arkansas is a feisty group, man. But I'm not going to stand in front of the Alabama freight train right now. They're covering these large spreads easily every week, it seems like. So I'm just going to assume they're going to do it again. So give me Bama there. And then Florida plays LSU. Their favorite 23 against them, and LSU. I can't pick them right now with the atrociousness of that defense. And the quarterback play has been horrible. So there's just not a lot going on. So Trask and his buddy Pitts and Tony, they should have a huge game against LSU. So I'll take the 2 huge favorites in those 2 matchups.
Okay. Let's get to the group of 5 conferences. I'll start with the AAC. So that's all set. It's going to be Cincinnati against Tulsa. The only question actually was who would host the championship game. And that was going to be decided on the field because they were supposed to play this weekend at Tulsa. But Cincinnati had to cancel due to COVID. So they're both going to end the regular season here 6-0. And the tiebreaker comes down to the playoff rankings, which of course Cincinnati's ahead. So Cincinnati will host Tulsa next weekend.
They better wait, not like the Mountain West did to, what was that, a few years back, right? Remember that?
Yeah. I remember Boise State got lucky, and was it
Fresno?
I think Fresno got screwed. Yeah, well, I mean, this one's not even a debate, but that game they got screwed. They decided this. The story was like, so they had the same rule. Whoever was higher in whatever the playoff ranking was going to host, and they decided early in the week before the rankings came out. Oh, it's Boise will be. Came out. Fresno was a game, and they already decided it was at Boise, so they just stuck it. So that's just crazy. That's brutal.
It is brutal. By the way, I'm checking out of the podcast here for a little bit because I'm going to play index that that stat
Jarek
about
Broussard.
All right. Yeah.
I like it. All right. So then I will go to Conference USA. There's 4 teams alive to get to the title game, 2 in both the West and the East. Let's start off in the West. So you got UAB and UTSA, UT San Antonio. They're the teams alive. UAB controls their destiny. They're in if they beat Rice this weekend. They're favored 7.5, but they do have 2 things going against them. One, they haven't played since Halloween.
Yeah, I was gonna say I haven't heard them play for a while.
So over a full month, they haven't played. That's hard to do. And then the second factor is Rice. I mentioned it earlier. They're coming in with some confidence. They just shut out unbeaten Marshall, one of the shockers of the year. But I don't see UAB throwing 5 picks like Grant Wells did. I'm still going to lean with UAB despite the rust because the defense is the strength of that unit, and I think they'll slow down Rice. But if they lose, UTSA gets in, and because they don't even play this weekend, so they're rooting hard for Rice, which is an amazing turnaround if UTSA.
I was going to say the Roadrunners, man, what a crazy year if they. I mean, even already, but if they make the title game, wow.
Yeah,
unbelievable coaching job.
And then
wait, okay, go ahead, Trey. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna get. Did you have something on either of them? I still have the East here.
No, go to the East.
Yeah, the East, a little bit more compelling. You got Marshall and Florida Atlantic. If Florida Atlantic loses to Southern Miss on Thursday, then Marshall's in no matter what, even if they lose to Charlotte. So if Marshall ends up beating Charlotte on Friday night, Marshall's in no matter what. So in those two games, Florida Atlantic, they're an 8-point favorite at Southern Miss. Southern Miss 2-7, but I'm actually going to take them. They've been competitive in their losses. Frank Gore Jr.'s their running back, been running pretty well. Florida Atlantic just lost 20-3 to Georgia Southern. So I think FAU's stingy defense.
Crazy Frank Gore Jr.'s already playing for
Yeah.
Southern Miss. You don't hear about that in the football world of running backs, especially, right?
And Dad's still running. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
So yeah, I'm taking the points with Southern Miss, and then Marshall. It's really hard. They laid an egg, as we've talked about. They're favored 20 again, but I'm thinking they're going to bounce back. Rice, they have one of the best defenses in the conference, whereas Charlotte's is dreadful. So they're going to get to go kind of. Grant Wells will redeem himself, have a good bounce back game, and so Marshall will end up winning, and they'll get to host the title game, in my opinion.
All right. Ready for that play index?
I'm ready with the play index. Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
So you said Jarek Broussard, 301 rushing yards, no touchdowns. Since 2000, only one other player has run for 300 yards without scoring at least a rushing touchdown. And it was West Virginia. It was a player for West Virginia against OU in 2016. This is a tough one. You can try and guess, but I would not come up with it.
No.
Kevin Brown? No. Was it
who was their running back?
2016 West Virginia running back.
I think I remember this game though. It was crazy. Baker. I want to say Baker was the quarterback.
Yeah, it was Baker Mayfield. Yeah,
it was at West Virginia. I just remember being a shootout.
It was 56-28 was the final.
Oh, well, that's not what I thought it was. But
okay.
Anyways, gosh, who was their running back? I don't know.
All right. Well,
initials.
I'll just tell you. Oh, initials JC.
Jesus Christ.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. It was. No, I was just gonna tell you. It was Justin Crawford. He had 24 carries, 331 yards.
Wow.
0 touchdowns.
That's pretty nuts.
And there have been a total of 6 guys since 2000 that have gone for 250 or more without a touchdown. One of them, exactly 250, was last year, Jonathan Taylor against Wisconsin.
Wow.
Wow. It's amazing.
That's crazy.
Against Iowa. So there you go.
That is, but yeah, 300 yards, no touchdown. So they're only one other guy. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
I should have thought of that. My bad on the play index.
That's okay. We should get a sponsorship from the Play Index. I'm going to email them maybe.
Sweet. All right. Let's go to the MAC. Lovely MACtion teams here. So in the West, there is a pseudo semifinal game here in the MAC. You got Ball State. They host Western Michigan. The winner goes to the MAC title game. Ball State's currently favored 2.5, and I'm going to take Ball State. They dominated a good Central Michigan team last week, that game was kind of a pseudo quarterfinal game, actually. So it's kind of working its way over here. While Western Michigan, on the other hand, they gave up 53 last week to Eastern Michigan. I'm talking about every directional Michigan school right now, but if you can keep those straight, you're doing well. So that was not impressive. So I think Drew Plitt and that Ball State offense, especially that pass offense, should have a field day against the Western Michigan D. So the East, Buffalo won. They won the East. They won it this past weekend by not having to play. So even if they lose to Akron this week, They're definitely
I
think they're
don't see that happening.
I don't see that happening. They're like 30-something point favorite.
Didn't Akron? They just beat Bowling Green. I guess Bowling Green sucks.
Yeah,
but...
Bowling Green's terrible too. They're like a 30-something point favorite. So and Jared Patterson will have 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns. So you know. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mountain West. So there are no divisions in the Mountain West this year. There's 3 teams left for 2 spots. So right now the standings at the top, you got San Jose State, unbelievably at 5-0, Boise State at 4-0, and Nevada at 6-1. So the likely scenario here is Boise State wins this weekend. They're an 11.5 point favorite at Wyoming. That would clinch a spot. I think they'll do that.
Wyoming's a solid team. They could.
Yeah,
they lost to New Mexico.
Yeah, I don't know how solid they are. I mean, it's only 11.5. It's not like it's a massive underdog, but I don't see their offense keeping up with Hank Bachmeier. They're pretty one-dimensional. All they do is run the ball. They've got a freshman quarterback that has kind of struggled. So, I see Boise winning there, and they will likely host. They'll likely be the home team in the conference championship because they'd be undefeated, and the only other team that can possibly go undefeated, San Jose State, is in a county where you can't play football right now. So, I think they're going to host. So it'll likely be Boise State against the winner of, on Friday night, Nevada at San Jose State. And San Jose State's favored 2.5. I'm going to take them. It's just an incredible story. Brent Brennan is done a great turnaround. They were 3-22 in his first 2 years there, but last year 5-7, and this year 5-0. I'm sure after we talked about his first 2 seasons, I can remember talking about him like, this guy's just a lame duck. Like,
yeah,
he's going to be fired for sure. But
you don't blame him because it was San Jose State. It's such a tough gig. But yeah, I'm sure we were just like, no way. We were checked out.
Yeah, but here he is. Yeah, 5-0. Nick Starkel is playing great at quarterback. He's got a great receiving core. So yeah, they're my pick to play Boise in the Mountain West title. There is one chaos scenario though. So say Nevada beats San Jose State on Friday, which obviously that could easily happen. Normally it would just be Nevada against Boise in that case. But if Boise loses to Wyoming, all 3 teams would have 1 loss, and Boise would be the odd team out because they played the fewest games. They'd only be 4-1. So yeah. So that's the one scenario that gets Boise out.
Well, I like it. That should be fun to watch, that Nevada San Jose State game.
Yeah, that'll be fun. It's basically a playing game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That's fun. Yep. All right. I'm going to finish it off with the Sun Belt. We got Louisiana. That's right. Louisiana is playing at Coastal Carolina. It's set. Louisiana's done. They had their last game against App State, as we talked about earlier. Coastal, they are favored 13.5, and this is a tough spot for them if they're not too careful. They're riding that emotional high from, biggest win in history last weekend with game day in town and whatnot. And they got the conference title next weekend. But Troy, they're playing Troy. They have a pretty decent defense. They're confident. They just shut out South Alabama last weekend. I expect Coastal to win, but there's a little trap sandwich game for them. So I'm going to take the points with Troy.
Going against Coastal.
No, well, I'll root for the Shants next week in the title game.
Okay, let's get to our locks of the weekend. You can choose a game we've already talked about or pick one of the games that doesn't have an impact on the conference title races. What do you think, Ryan?
Yes, I will pick a game that we've already talked about. I'm taking, you talked about it, Michael. Illinois. They're 14.5 point dogs at Northwestern. Northwestern has only beaten 1 team this year by more than 10, and that was the very first game of the year against Maryland. So even if they do win, they're not dominating. And of course, we know they just lost to Sparty. So, and Illinois, man, they're a decent team. They can run the ball pretty well. Brandon Peters is solid. So I think they got a decent chance of pulling off that win in Evanston.
Did you hear that lock?
We did.
No, I was kind of treating that like a upset special there. No. I was kind of thinking in my head as I'm doing it, upsets, but hey, it would have been a good pick too.
Okay, well, my lock is going to be Texas minus 29.5 at Kansas. And I know these two teams have played closer than expected games recently, but Kansas is maybe even worse this year than they usually are. They're winless. They've lost by 30 or more to TCU, OU, Iowa State, K-State, and Oklahoma State. And Tom Herman, I think, is just looking to close out this season strong, trying to kind of save his job heading into next year. They just put up 69 points on
Nice.
K-State last week. Yep. And so, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they put up 50.
And now that they're not reaching out to Urban, maybe now that Urban's not coming downtown.
That's other big news that, we should have brought up. Yeah, Urban Meyer reportedly not coming back to coaching next year.
That's kind of wow, Tom Herman, get your stuff together here next year, or else you're gone.
Yeah, that's if he doesn't get fired at the end of this year, then he's got.
It's almost like
one more.
If he doesn't make the Big 12 title game next year, he's gone. Like
it depends how it happens, but
it depends how it happens, I guess. But
yeah,
that's essentially what this year he's going to finish 7-3 and just miss out, and they're talking getting rid of him. That's
Yeah, I thought if he didn't make the Big 12 title game this year, he would have been out. But we'll see. 7-3, some close losses. Maybe give him another chance with full off season of his new coordinators.
One more year.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right. Mine lock is going to be where College Game Day is. We got Army Navy. Army is favored 7. Army's hosting Navy in an oddity that it's not at a neutral site given this crazy year. I'm taking Army. Navy's had a down year. I know this is the big rivalry and they all get up for it, but Navy's been particularly bad on offense. Army's defense is pretty solid. I don't see why they can't slow down that attack. So I think Army is going to end the year 8-2.
Relatively soft schedule.
very
very. I agree.
I mean, they had BYU game canceled, so they at least had that on the schedule.
But they only lost by 14 at Cincinnati, and one of them was like a fluke touchdown. So
it's true. Beautiful Mikey Stadium in West Point.
Okay, let's close out this episode with a questionable finish. All right, Michigan, Ohio State was, of course, canceled this weekend. What's something you've missed out on or had canceled that you really want to happen?
I will go with I kind of have 2, but I'll just go with 1 here, I guess, for now. I'll go with last year's March Madness. Man, I wanted that. We're from Omaha. I'm a big Creighton basketball fan, so it's their best year ever. They won the conference. Could have been a 2 seed, and they never made the Sweet 16. They might have had a chance, and no tournament. Oh, that stunk.
That sucks. Mine wasn't a cancellation, but just a good number I missed out on was betting Kyle Trask 33-1 to win the Heisman.
Yeah, you were pretty upset with that.
A week before the Georgia game, because we talked about it in our Patreon episode. We did one previewing the Heisman kind of midway through the year, and we talked about how Trask, if they win against Georgia, which wasn't that unlikely, he'd immediately be one of the favorites. And for some reason, I decided not to bet it.
Yeah, you'll be kind of pulling for Bama, I think, just because of that.
Yeah.
No, I have Florida 12-1 to win.
Oh, well, there you go. So you've got it. Yeah, not so bad.
Hopefully they squeak by and Trask somehow doesn't play that well, and they still.
Well, I also bet Trask 6-1 after Georgia. So
yeah, well, there you go.
You're screwing yourself either way.
He's still fired. No, mine was when I was 12 years old, playing baseball. I was a pitcher, and I'd always wanted to be the catcher. And it got down to the last game of the year, and I was going to be the catcher, and I was so looking forward to it. A day before the game, I break my ankle in my backyard just messing around. Didn't get to play catcher. Never ended up getting to play catcher. I was always so disappointed. I really wanted to do that.
Just another. Oh, go ahead.
No, I had the same scenario. Well, I didn't want to be pitcher catcher, but just remember breaking the ankle and just trying to pretend that you didn't break it. No, I can still play.
Oh yeah,
can't even walk.
I just another sick brag after the fact. Everyone loves when someone says that they want that after the fact. I also have Mac Jones 25-1 to win the Heisman. So
NBD.
No.
NBD, no big deal. I've never lost a bet, so that's
never.
If you could add one more week to the season and choose any 2 teams to play each other, who would you choose?
Well, as of this moment, I would love an old school rivalry because, USC, they're unbeaten right now. They're not really having a chance to get in the playoff. But if they were able to play Notre Dame, which they traditionally do play Notre Dame every year, that would be just a fun game to see, especially this year, given how good both teams are.
Yeah, especially Notre Dame. But thank you for including USC in that.
Well, hey, they'd have a chance.
Yeah, we'd have a chance. So for me, it always sucks to see an undefeated team miss out on the playoff. Of course, like UCF a few years ago. So I want Cincinnati to have a shot because they're the one that's closer. I would have picked Coastal, but that's kind of a prayer at this point. So I want Cincinnati to play Ohio State. You got in-state teams. It'll be a must-watch game. And because I got to think, if Cincinnati wins that, they're in for sure. Like, you can't leave them out.
Well, if they beat Ohio State, sure. Yeah.
That'd be sweet.
No doubt about that. All right. Well, I kind of had two in mind, and that you guys kind of mixed both of mine together here. So I'll just say both of mine. I was thinking Cincy and Coastal, just to, you got two undefeated G5 teams. Kind of be the bragging rights of, well, not necessarily bragging rights, but just see, okay, which G5 team is going to be that top G5 team this year? Because it's very likely they'll both finish undefeated. Well, still pretty likely. Can happen. And then the other one I was thinking was just USC and Colorado. I mean, that game would have decided the South this year, and they just didn't get to play. So it's kind of unfortunate that the two teams, we would have thought Colorado, right? That if you had to say which game was going to get canceled, as far as that would have meant the most. That would have been like one of the lowest choices on the totem pole. So I would have kind of liked to see both those matchups. But USC Colorado is kind of the main one. I was like, dang, I would have liked to see. Can Colorado actually do it, like, for real? I would have to see.
For sure. All right, well, let's pick our upset specials. Every week we pick a 7+ point underdog to win outright. I had Cal beating Oregon last week. And this week, I'm going to take Navy. Sorry, Trey, I'm going against Army here to win outright as a 7-point dog. 5 of the last 6 years, this game has been decided by one score. And like we talked about, Army, they're winning them, so credit to them. But they've had one of the easiest schedules in the country, so it's just kind of can be hard to judge. Maybe these teams are closer than the records appear.
That's fair. Georgia Southern, they're getting 10 from App State. App State, we talked about it earlier. They had the crushing loss to Louisiana. Their season goals are pretty much finished at this point. Georgia Southern, they've been a snake-bitten team, man. 4 losses, where 3 of them were in the final seconds. The other was only a 2-score loss at our Chance. They would like to finish beating App State, so I'm picking them.
Alrighty. I forgot who I picked last week.
You had Illinois. You had a bad beat.
Oh, I did? Rats. All right.
They lost by like a half a point.
That was his upset special or his lock?
That was his upset special last week because I was almost going to take it. And I think they lost by a half point. Because they were up 14-0.
So then I didn't get that unlucky.
Oh, yeah, not the outright win. Well, they were up 14-0.
Yeah, it was up 14-0. Look good, right? All right. Still unlucky. Come on.
Sure.
So what? All right. Okay. This week I'll take Missouri. They're getting 13 right now at home against Georgia. Georgia, they're still definitely vulnerable. They've obviously played a lot better since JT Daniels got in there, but they almost lost to Mississippi State a couple weeks ago. So I don't see why not with Connor Bazelak. The Missouri's been kind of having their offense get going here. So, maybe a couple turnovers here or there. Mizzou could pull it off.
All righty. Well, thanks for listening to the College Football Bros podcast. Actually, one quick announcement before we end the show here. Next Friday, we're planning to have a holiday Zoom night with all of our patrons. One of the patrons, Kenny, who is a co-host of the Prospects 101 College Football podcast, which you should all subscribe to. We know you like college football. Those guys do a great job, so be sure to subscribe to that. He's going to be hosting a trivia challenge that all the patrons can take part in, and the bros will be competing as well. So if you want to take part in that and just support the show, sign up for our Patreon, patreon.com/collegefootballbros. It's $5 a month. You get a bonus episode every month. Our next one is probably also going to be a trivia episode, which we'll record here in the next few days. So again, thanks for listening. Thanks for considering that. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you. See you.
You've been listening to the College Football Bros. If you have any questions for the next podcast, email them to collegefootballbros@gmail.com. To keep up with the brothers on social media, like them on Facebook at College Football Bros, follow them on Instagram at College Football Bros, and for their commentary on Saturdays, follow them on Twitter at CFB Bros. Thanks for listening.